who's going to talk about Moodle 2 and some of the upgrade work that they're doing at the Open University.
Thank you. We've done some Moodle Drupal integration as well, but I'm not going to talk about that. Okay, this is really going to be an update on the keynote I gave here last year. At the end of the presentation last year, I asked an awful lot of questions and suggested a number of different ways we were going to move forward with Moodle. I'm actually going to take you back a little bit and pick up with where I finished at the end of the last presentation. But I was going to start with an apology. I've been mixing in some rough company recently. I spent last week in Leeds talking with people at Blackboard. They started all their presentations with a slide like this. It doesn't feel right for a Moodle presentation at all. That's probably closer to where we are in the Moodle community. Anyway, this time last year, I talked a lot about the work we'd done getting Moodle 1 into place, particularly Moodle 1.9. We had an absolute trolley load of core customizations that we'd made, which seemed like a good idea at the time, but I was getting kind of nervous about. We were seeing something like 35 to 50,000 users a day hitting the system. We were peaking at something like 700,000 transactions a day. And I've asterisked that because we have our own peculiar way of counting transactions, but remember that number, it's significant. And we were giving a lot of thought to Moodle 2. This is a slide I picked out of the deck from last time. The options that I spelt out then for us with Moodle 2, one was to ignore it and hope it would go away. Second was to adopt it and remake all the localizations we'd made. Conclusion was that was likely to be pretty expensive. Third option, which I always thought was the most likely one, was to adopt it, but use many fewer localizations. Do stuff more the Moodle way and less the OU way. So what happened after Moodle last year? Over the time, the traffic has just kept on growing and growing and growing. User counts are up by about 35%. Transaction counts up by over 100% over the last year. However, we were also set a major challenge to add lots of new stuff into our learning and teaching systems and to do it very, very fast. Back to the numbers for a moment. Transaction count, the OU is a strange place in many ways, but our usage profile through the year is different to anyone else. We see peaks in February, in November, and to a lesser extent in May. This is how our transaction count has changed over the last kind of 15 months or so. We were bumping along quite merrily through the first half of last year, and suddenly we saw major spikes in towards the end of the year, picking up to close to February this year, where we were seeing well over 1 million transactions a day, sometimes peaking close to 1.5 million transactions a day. So over 100% up on what we had last year. The other thing that we've seen quite dramatically is a huge increase in the use of the forum that we're using within our version of Moodle. This isn't the standard Moodle forum. This is our incarnation of the forum, written entirely within the OU and shared back with the community. That's carrying monstrous amounts of traffic at the moment. I think Tim Hunt, one of my colleagues, tweeted about this a couple of weeks ago, pointing out that since Moodle.org has been running, there's been a total of about 750,000 forum postings placed on the site. We managed to allow our students to post almost 500,000 postings onto the forums just in February this year. So we're seeing huge traffic numbers coming through the system. And it's actually, Moodle 1.9 installation is working very, very well. That's one of my concerns at the moment. The expectation around the institution for the VLE is that it's pretty much bulletproof, can cope with huge amounts of load, and just keeps ticking along. That's going to be one of the challenges I'll come back to in a moment, talking about Moodle 2. The acceleration challenge was the thing I wasn't expecting to get when I went back after Moodle Moot last year. We had already laid out a set of developments we wanted to carry out over the next over a 2-year period, and we'd put together a fairly detailed plan that spelt out what we wanted to do. We essentially were summoned into the headmaster's office and told that while the plan looked great, the timescale didn't, and we were basically told everything we'd planned to do in 24 months we needed to do in 12. Which was a challenge to say the least. The other question that came on the back of that was, because we were talking about this middle of last year, was, well, what do we do that based on? Do we base it on Moodle 1.9? Do we do it on Moodle 2? Do we do it on something else? I've got another entire presentation on the something else bit of the transaction, but purposes of this exercise, I'll cut to the chase. We did opt to stick with Moodle 2, and we particularly did opt to use it in a rather less customized way than we had before. Critical point, though, is we were planning to use Moodle 2 as our basis for a lot of development work over a relatively short period of time, and we were going to be trying to doing that around the time when Moodle 2 was starting to be released into the wild. Critically, we wanted many fewer core customizations. We had built ourselves a major problem in Moodle 1.9. The transition to Moodle 2 was the point when we thought we had to actually find a better way of handling the OU-specific features that we wanted within our VLE, rather than simply hacking in the core whenever we needed to, whenever we thought about it. We've done this by looking at the OU's requirements and handling these via separate modules that run inside what is a very close to standard Moodle 2 environment. We couldn't get away with making no changes to the core at all, but we're down onto the fingers and thumbs of two hands. I think probably is the kind. Talked about the number of core customizations that we've had to make. Some of them are short term that will disappear as time goes on, but others we've come very, very close to trying to get away from having a heavy layer of core customizations. Okay, so what did we do as part of this migration process? We re-implemented and enhanced the OU forum, the OU blog, the OU wiki. These are all tools that we've contributed back to 1.9 in the past, and we will be offering back in Moodle 2 versions later on this year. We've reworked the authoring tools that we were using for Moodle 2. I think I talked on a number of occasions about the structured content and XML-based authoring system that we've been using at the Open University, tightly integrated with Moodle. We're actually going to release that into the wild now. We've not been able to do that previously, but that again will be part of the suite of Moodle 2 related tools that we make available. There's a replacement for the database called Data Plus that we're going to have in place. We've also done work on a study planner that specific to the OU's requirements. One critical thing that one of my colleagues, Tim Hunt, will be talking about tomorrow is what we've done to sort out the quiz. Many of you will know that we've been doing a lot of work on re-engineering the Moodle quiz. It will be a standard part of Moodle 2.1 sometime this year. We've been using it as part of 1.9. We've also moved it through into now working with Moodle 2, and it will be part of our initial Moodle 2 release, which I'll come to in a moment. That's one of the short-term fudges we've had to put in place. I think Tim can talk at great length about this. He's done all the groundwork behind it. He knows a lot about it. I think he's talking tomorrow afternoon. We've re-implemented our data integration, and we're in the process of re-implementing the Moodle integration, the Illuminate integration we have with Moodle. And that's, as some of you will know, Illuminate was bought up by Blackboard, and that was why I had to go to a Blackboard conference last week to actually talk about the Blackboard Collaborate program that's going to replace Illuminate. We've also been doing a lot of work revisiting the roles, groups, and permission structure that we use within Moodle. This is an area where we've made a lot of customizations, a lot of core changes. What we've done is rework how we express the roles and groups that we have within the university to use the standard Moodle structures to do that. When we first started looking at Moodle, I think it was probably 1.7 or 1.8, it wasn't a realistic way of representing the groups we wanted to represent. We think there is now in Moodle 2, so we've done that in a much more standard way. New stuff that we've done as well. Some of this is internal to Moodle. Other bits, which I'll come on to a little bit later on, are external applications that where we're integrating more tightly with Moodle. We are working to integrate Moodle tightly with Google Apps for Education. We've actually eased back on that work a little bit at the moment because we've got some major accessibility concerns about Google Apps. There's some fairly nasty legal stuff going on in the US at the moment. A number of organizations are suing Google over the lack of accessibility around Google Apps. So we've already expressed these concerns to Google. We're waiting for them to respond to that. So we've actually backed off on some of that integration work while we actually see where that layer of activity goes. Any of you are interested in knowing a bit more about that, do come and talk to me later. We're improving mobile support for our incarnation of Moodle. We're seeing a pretty rapid increase in the use of mobile devices alongside the standard browser-based growth. We're adding personalization of learning experience to a lot of the tools. We think this is an important element. We need to be able to address how the user's preferences, whether it's to do with the format of the material they're getting access to, the learning paths through the material. So there's an increasing layer of work we're doing around personalization. We're also adding and improving a number of user-generated content tools. I'm going to talk about one of these, an annotation system that we've been working on recently, and I'll show you some early screenshots from that that we're going to be using alongside our Moodle installation. One of the challenges I want to say a little bit about is our migration strategy. For a lot of you, you will have quiet times during the year when you can do a migration from one big Moodle version to another. We ain't got that luxury. We're seeing heavy traffic pretty much throughout the year. This graph is showing the average numbers of students coming on each week during 2010. And yes, it quietens off a bit in the summer, but quietening off a bit in the summer still means we've got between 20 and 25,000 students coming in to use the platform every day. So it's not very quiet. Picks up during our February, May, and November peaks, but there's a lot of students using it all the time. There isn't a good time. Turn the system off, move to something new. So we really needed to find an alternate way to get around this problem. With incremental upgrades we've had over the last few years from various versions based on Moodle 1.9, we've essentially done a fairly careful in-service, in-situ update. We just didn't think we could use that as a model for moving from 1.9 to 2. Part of the problem is that there is no standard OU course pattern. We've got something like 600 courses running at any one time. They all have their own pattern. The courses start pretty much every month of the year. There are clusters that start in February, May, and November, which give our peaks, but you've got a really complex pattern. We've got lots of 9-month courses. We've got quite a lot of 6-month courses. We've got some longer courses than that. We've got some very short ones as well. But there really is a very complex pattern. There isn't any straightforward way of deconstructing that. The one observation we can make is that OU courses generally aren't very long. 9-10 months is about as long as the courses ever are. So what we've opted to do is to have a progressive migration from a 1.9 installation to a Moodle 2 installation over about a 12-month period. And as particular courses end on the 1.9 platform, we'll close them down on that and then reopen them on the Moodle 2 platform when the new cohort of students start. So that will mean we're at least going to have a 10 to 12 month parallel running period where we've got both 1.9 and 2 operating in parallel. There are lots of downsides to that, but they aren't as big as the downsides of trying to do a big bang installation, getting from 1.9 to 2, particularly when we still don't really know how Moodle 2 is going to cope with the load. I want to talk you through some of the designs we've got that we've been exploiting the new themes system that exists within Moodle 2. One of the things that we've done is we wanted to have a fairly clear visual distinction between our 1.9 Moodle installation and our 2 Moodle installation, simply to make it easy for students to tell which platform they're on. We're going to get students calling the help desk, asking for help in a course. The first thing we're going to have to do is figure out what platform they're on to resolve the problem. The easier we can make it for them to tell us which platform they're on, the better. There's more to it than that, though. We're also trying to build on the experience we've had, particularly around usability developments, on top of the 1.9 themes that we've got. So I've got one or two screenshots that are close to final. That's our main core study planner. It doesn't look quite like a standard Moodle installation, but this includes quite a lot of the features that we've got in place. I'm going to make this slide stack available on SlideShare later on today, if you want to have a closer look at the various things that we've done here. Forum is an important part of the tool. We've got a number of forum aspects, forum renders shown here that show how the student will be able to bring together the different sorts of forums that they have access to at any time during the course. Actually, the forums are an absolutely critical tool for us. We see huge amounts of traffic going through the forums every day. I've talked about seeing nearly 500,000 postings in February. On any day of the week, we will see something like between 400 and 600,000 forum views happening. So there's a lot of traffic. So it isn't just students posting. There are lots of people, other students reading those postings as well. So it's very high traffic. So the tools we feel we need to have to make those forums as usable as possible are quite critical. And that's the standard kind of reading screen within the forum. I'll say a little bit about mobile. We're seeing an increasingly large amount of mobile traffic coming to the VLE, something like 2 million pages last month. And in terms of we're always interested in looking at what platforms our students are using, but Apple is still winning hands down, at least amongst the OU students that are using their devices to access the website. So it's about 60% Apple, about 23% Android, a little nudge of BlackBerry, and one or two other minority things floating around further down the number stakes. But it is critical that it is heavily Apple dominated. Android figures, however, are growing, as you might expect. One of the things I think I mentioned last year when we were talking about handling mobile-based traffic is how were we going to do that? Was it going to be through bespoke applications running on the device, or through just simply rendering into a mobile web browser? If you'd asked me this time last year, I would have put money on doing a lot of application development, and we started doing a lot of application development. Feedback we've been getting, though, is that that's not what the requirement is. The push we're coming, or the pull we're getting from our students, is around using the browser-based renders. So we've actually pushed in our Moodle 2 work. We've actually stopped any application development at all, and we're just concentrating on getting the right themes in place to run on to allow the web-based interface to work as effectively as possible. Two quick screenshots taken from the design that we've got around the browser, the mobile browser look. This is essentially, it's sniffed automatically. We use a standard tool across the entire university to do, so we're doing consistent mobile device detection, so where a student doesn't get a kind of an odd experience as they wander around different aspects of the Open University's online provision. They're actually getting a relatively standardized mobile view as they get access to it. One of the things I'm interested to see is how these numbers grow over the next year or so, where we actually see what students are trying to do with the mobile devices, whether they're using it simply as a communications tool, or whether they're actually using it as a study tool. So we are going down the route of essentially making the full course available through a mobile device. I say I'm interested to see just how heavily students make use of the learning content as opposed to the collaborative tools as they're studying. The annotation tool I referred to a few minutes ago, we're essentially reinventing the highlighter pen and the post-it note for our online provision. I have to emphasize this is not a Moodle-specific development. This is a general-purpose development. It runs off a website we've got here. We've got it at the OU. But essentially it allows annotations to be made or managed on any website the students have got access to. We've also built a collaborative element into that allows students to share their annotations with other users, either within their study groups, within the university, within the OU community, or more widely as well. At the moment, all we're saying is that to initiate using this, you need to be a member of the OU community. But again, we are planning to make this freely available, so you can take it away and install it wherever you want to use it in your institution. We feel we need to keep the community that's unable to make the annotations a little bit close. This is not a general purpose kind of global tool that the OU is positioning itself. It is a teaching tool that we want to use within our courses. A number of tools like this already exist. When we started kind of chasing those down, we found there wasn't really anything that would do the kind of grouping management that we wanted to be able to do. So that was why we felt we had to redevelop something that actually does this in the way we want. I'm hoping this is going to be around towards the end of the summer in serious use. And in fact, we can actually roll it out to our OU students without it being tied into a Moodle release as we're going. A couple of quick screenshots. It's the kind of way that students will be able to add annotations to the website they're browsing. And if they choose to share these annotations with other people, you'll get a slightly more elaborate interface like this that allows you to both see your comments and other people's comment reflections on your comments as well as their initiated comments. There's quite a complex design process we've been through in trying to clarify how this tool will actually work, and we've tested it a little bit with small groups of students in a mocked-up version, but we will be doing some pretty rigorous testing over the next few months as we get the initial developments put in place. Okay, I want to go back to timetable, where we're getting to in terms of Moodle 2. It's still my hope that we're going to have limited groups of OU students using our VLE2, VLE based on Moodle 2, in July this year. It may be quite small numbers, but the benefit of the staged migration process is we can actually marshal or police quite closely how many students we let into the system at one time. We're not trying to let the whole 250,000 students we have signed up at any one time onto the system at once, so we can ramp it up slowly over a period of time. If we have to ramp up very slowly, it will obviously extend the overall migration time, so we don't want to do that too gently. But we are going to be doing that, and I think that's largely going to be based on understanding how good Moodle 2 is under seriously high loads. I talked a little bit about the numbers earlier on. Where the student numbers aren't growing hugely at the moment, the transaction counts are still climbing quite dramatically. I need to worry about what's going to happen towards the end of this year when we get to the November peak. Am I going to be having too many students on a system that just can't cope with the load? We do still have concerns about Moodle 2. The biggest one, I think, is around performance. We're currently in the middle of load testing. We built a fairly complete Moodle 2 installation with most of the OU specific modules migrated for the end of last month, and we're doing load testing at the moment. We still think it's slow, 2 to 3 times slower than 1.9. What we haven't got any kind of definitive word yet is where we think that slowness is coming from. We don't know whether it's to do with the database not being as well tuned as it could be, or whether there's some underlying bottlenecks in the code. And that's really what we're trying to shake out at the moment. I should say that we're running this on Postgres at the moment, and we will tend to carry on doing this. But there's been relatively little tuning work done on Postgres over the recently, at least as far as I'm aware. We will make a decision about the system's ability to carry load at some point in May, and we'll I hope have small numbers of students starting to use the system in July. If for some reason we can't do that, we'll put it back month by month, essentially until we're at a point where we're confident the platform can cope with that load. We need to give a little bit of lead time before we actually can switch things over, so we need to make a decision probably 2 to 3 months before students would actually start using the system to allow us to do the migration of content from one platform to the other. On the accessibility front, we still do have some concerns about accessibility of the Moodle platform. Some of these problems we're escalating back to Perth. Some of them we're resolving locally within the OU, but we do still have some concerns about how this is going to work with some of the assistive technologies we know that our students use. I've kind of mentioned accessibility a number of times. I think it's important to kind of emphasize that this is a big deal for the OU. We have more students using assistive technologies, or more disabled students, than the rest of the UK higher ed sector put together. So we've got a significantly high number of students, and we need to ensure that the accessibility tools that they're using are going to work appropriately with the platform before we can cut across to using it as a mainstream tool. There's 2 further things I want to say. One was to say, it's over for an invite. We'd like to initiate some discussion about the evaluation, development and deployment of Moodle 2 within the UK higher ed community. So we're suggesting hosting a day in Milton Keynes on the 13th of June. There'll be more about this over the next few weeks. And we'll send out an email and tweets to as wide a range of people as we can. But we would like as many people as possible who are working with Moodle 2 to come and join us while we talk about the issues around Moodle 2. I think there are quite a lot that we still need to grapple with. We're primarily aiming at this at staff with a strategic interest in Moodle, but I think there should also be staff of interest to the more technically inclined. We'll talk in a bit more depth about the processes we're going through around Moodle 2, but I hope other people will see fit to come and join us. We'll also want to gauge whether there's any interest in forming a UK higher education users group around Moodle. We're simply putting it down as a possibility. If there's interest in doing that, we will happily work with whoever else is interested to try and make this happen. As I say, there'll be more information soon. I'm going to finish off by doing a plug for my colleagues. 3 guys from my team are around. One's around today. 2 others will be joining him tomorrow to talk about the various bits of work we've been doing around Moodle 2. Anthony Forth will talk particularly about the work we're doing in supporting mobile users of Moodle. Sam Marshall will be talking about the work he's been doing with Martin and his team in Perth, and how we've been working with Moodle HQ. We've kind of rather grandly described it as how to change Moodle. We feel we've done quite a good job in working with Moodle and HQ to do that constructively. Finally, Tim Hunt is going to be talking about the new Moodle quiz engine. This again is an update on the talk he gave in this room about a year ago, and he will talk a little bit about the Moodle, the new quiz engine that is going to be part of the Moodle 2.1 install. When that hits the streets, and hopefully by the time Tim is doing that talk tomorrow, you'll have heard from Martin, and he'll have told us a bit about when Moodle 2.1 is going to appear. Okay, before I open the floor to questions, I tweet periodically about Moodle and e-learning related stuff, and often about other things as well. The bit.ly URL at the bottom is my work blog. I will be posting links to this presentation on SlideShare, and also links to the presentations of my colleagues as well. So if you want to get those presentations, please do. Do come and talk to me either afterwards or at any other time. You've got my email address here. But if there are any immediate questions now, I'll be happy to field them.
The planner tool you were describing, is that all you always do? Is it available as a module somewhere? Because it was quite exciting.
So there's
the planner,
study planner.
Study planner, yes.
Okay, it's a question about the study planner tool. Yes, our intention is we try and make everything we do available to the Moodle community. And we've done that with the 1.9 developments in the past. We haven't made any of the Moodle 2 stuff properly available to the community yet. I think Sam Marshall did actually make versions of the forum blog and the wiki that we've been working on available in their 2 incarnations recently, but he had it plastered with caveats at the moment. Until we've brought the tools into service, until we think the right to bring into service at the OU, we tend not to encourage other people to use them, so we don't have too many rogue versions floating around. But intention is, with all these things, is to make everything we can available as widely as we can. Yeah. The OU's, there's a question about TMA submission tool. The OU has a separate TMA submission tool that's not part of Moodle. Within the OU at the moment, there's a fairly major review of all the IT systems, other than the learning and teaching ones, underway. So I think everything's being looked at at the moment. For those of you who haven't been associated with the OU, we've had a tutor-marked assignment submission system that we've been using for several years now. It predates Moodle by quite a lot, and it carries something like a million submissions a year at the moment, and ensures that the assignment that the student is submitting gets forwarded to the correct OU tutor, and when the tutor has marked it and puts it back into the system, it gets back to the right student, and also that the grades that the tutor has assigned get pushed off into the right part of the Open University admission system. It was such a good system, we decided we weren't going to tinker with it. That's still the case. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I think. Yes, we will. As soon as we're clear what we're going to do, we'll share those. I think it's in everyone's interest to understand what the real story is. We have a monitoring system that logs almost all almost all of the page views described as transactions. We strip out some of the heavier administrative stuff that doesn't really tell us very much about the student response to the system, but it's close to the page views number. But any counting system is going to be yeah. Yeah. Well, I fessed up last year to having several thousand changes to core, OU specific changes to the code base. It's not somewhere I want to be again. Yeah. As with an awful lot of the OU's activities, the secrets are usually come back to the associate lecturers. We did quite a lot of work around the OpenLearn platform a number of years ago. There's the Open Education Resources platform that we have that runs in Moodle, and we looked at what was required to initiate a discussion. And essentially that it is around kind of building momentum in a discussion. It's like going into an empty room and starting talking. You feel a bit, well, I feel a bit self-conscious about doing that. So it is a matter of giving the students something to talk about, which sounds a little bit trite, but it's actually guiding the initiation of the discussion. And at the moment, that's all academic-related discussions that's going on at the moment. We have the students, the OU Students Association, run a very wide-ranging discussion forum that they have for many years that cover every topic you care to imagine, and probably several you care not to imagine. We're about to move them across into the VLE as well. That's going to further boost the forum transaction count. But it is all about kind of not just leaving an empty forum for discussion to happen, but building activities around that discussion. Yeah. Sorry, back in the lights.
What size is your development team, and when did you start, and how long did it take? Straight from 1.92.
We haven't finished yet on the last bit. At the moment, I have a development team of about 30. About 2/3 of that are actually people that are cutting code on a daily basis. The remainder are people that are working around with the wider university community and doing things like establishing requirements for developments, working with the members of the OU community to use the tools once they've been developed, so they're making effective use of them. So yeah, it's a big team. There was the third element to that question between.
When did you start?
Oh, okay. No, it's well, we made the decision we weren't going to start until there was something that was labelled as Moodle 2 available. So we actually started just before Christmas working on it. So the development we've done, moving from 1.9 to 2, essentially happened over the last 4 months.
Can you talk more about the annotation tools? That's only for students that go about Moodle or go off to some websites pointing out Moodle to annotate. Is there also integration for some tutor giving feedback to student work, and what happens to things like uploading files and things like that?
Okay, the annotation. This is a question about the annotation tool. The annotation tool in itself is intended as a personal use tool. So essentially, it allows students to mark up the websites that they're visiting, whether they're parts of the VLE, which is the core application that we want it for, or any other web-based environment that the student is working in. Essentially, it's allowed them to annotate those pages, same way as they would mark up textbooks. So it's not being envisaged as an assessment tool at all. It's up to the student who they choose to share that with. They can choose to share it with their tutor if that's the arrangement they want to come to. But it's very much in the control of the It's in the control of the student. As a personal tool, if that, just for themselves, if that's the way they want to use it. If they want to share it with others within their tutor group or more widely within the university community, they can do that. We're trying to make that as easy as possible. For us, the critical point was to ensure that we had the tutor group information there, so it's easy for a student to share with others in their tutor group, rather than just with individuals within the community. It's conceivable it could be used for assessed activity, but that isn't how we've envisaged it at the moment. But like lots of bits of technology, you're going to develop it in one way, and you find the users use it in a very different way. Yeah. Really? Okay, thank you. I will tweet an update confirming what the date is. Thank you. Yeah. The intention was to try and focus it rather than make it an all-encompassing event. There's no conspiracy floating around in it. It was really a matter of kind of thinking about kind of trying to where there was a common streams of interest. If that is seems like an inappropriate grouping, I certainly have no problem about widening it. Yeah. Sure, absolutely. Yeah, that's an absolutely valid point. Yeah.
Also, I'd like to reinforce that we deliver quite a large amount, but a growing amount of AG within the NetBeans context, so the divisions are blurring.
Yeah.
I suspect this comes from
I'm going to duck the political strand element to that, but yes, I think that blurring is an extremely valid point. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'd like to thank both speakers for very interesting presentations, and also for making my job easy by both finishing on time and allowing suitable questions. We've got a coffee break coming up now. We're finished a bit early, so I'll let you all get to the front of the queue, and that's next door. And thank you again to our presenters.